What's going on, guys? This is Tony K with UGSM, living the dream as always. And you can see just by my screen, we're going to be talking about some culturally offensive things with Magic the Gathering. You can see the date down here is the 22nd of January. And, well, we're going to talk about something I saw on the Magic Historians channel on YouTube about a week ago, maybe two, I'm not sure. Basically, eBay's not allowing cards that are on this list to be sold, is the gist of it. Now, there's ways around that, and they've been letting people know, like, hey, we don't want you selling some of these cards. I wanted to talk about this whole situation, because while this article that I have on the screen is over 2 years old, the issue still remains. So, this might be a longer video. I don't know how long this is going to be. I was talking to a friend about this, and he brought up that some of the things I was saying on this topic that I'm going to share today were things he hadn't heard on eBay or on YouTube or anything else like that, so I just want to talk about it. Let's start with the base of where we're starting from. So we have, back in June 2020, God, that seems like such a long time ago, we have 7 cards that... I don't want to get into the whole, it's woke culture, it's accountability culture. I don't want to get any of that shit. What we're going to say is that society has changed over the years, which is a very understandable thing. You know, society 100 years ago is not what it was 50 years ago, is not what it was 20 years ago, is not what it was 2 years ago. Society evolves. Well, Wizards of the Coast, the people who make Magic the Gathering, said that these 7 cards right here were considered inappropriate for racism or depicting something that could be insinuated as racism. You know, I've heard people call them the woke list, the trigger cards, whatever you want to call it. I think we all know that there's a list of cards that, based on what they have on them for art or wording or whatever, they're just not okay. I'm not here to discuss... Like I said, I'm not here to discuss the changing metrics of society. I really couldn't give a rip. I wanted to talk about more up-to-date stuff. Let's go through this list of 7 cards here, and then I have a different link here that we can look at. So up first is probably the most egregious of any card ever printed. This is likely the most egregious. I remember the first time I saw this card like 15, 20 years ago, and just looking at it, I was like, oh, that's inappropriate. There's some tones there that, Jesus, what are we doing here? So, invoke prejudice. Well, the name alone would give you a sense that there's something there. The art, people wearing what looks like hoods, axe, things like that. And then even the wording on the card, if it's a color that doesn't match what you have, you know, counter it or whatever. So there's some issues there. Okay, next card is Cleanse. It's a Wrath of God, except destroy all black creatures. And again, I'm not arguing for or against anything here. I'm just stating I understand how they got to the conclusion. You're talking about Cleanse with destroy all black creatures. Okay. Stone Throwing Devils, another one that has some racial undertones according to Wizards of the Coast. Pradesh Gypsies, or Pradesh Gypsies, I don't know. I have a couple copies of this somewhere from collections I've bought over the years. I was surprised this made the list, but it's on the list. Jihad, which, totally fair. Totally fair. The word across the globe incites such raw emotion. I don't blame them for saying, hey, you know what? Let's move past this. Imprison. I believe this was more due to the art. I'm not 100% sure. And then Crusade, which, fun fact about Crusade, it's been printed like 8 or 9 times. This is the most recent printing on the screen. It's from the Dual Decks, Elspeth versus Tezzeret, I think. Which, Dual Decks came out not too long ago. So these are the 7 cards that started the list of culturally offensive cards. Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast said, hey, we don't want these on the Gatherer site. TCG players said, we're not going to show these. and now eBay's coming out, and the card that I saw used as the example in the eBay stuff was Crusade. Um, they don't want some of these cards sold. Okay. And then we go over here to MTG Wiki, the fandom site, and you see that there are some other cards that have a little attention. Cards like Barbary Apes, which I guess real quick it states, whether it's flavor text or art, just something was unsuitable based on what they saw here. So Barbary Apes, which, okay, I guess if you want to, you can. I'm not going to disagree with you. If you find something offensive and you can explain it, that's fair. Craw Giant, I was a little surprised by. Even as I did some research to prepare for this video, I was like, I don't know. I don't get it. Is it because it says midgets? I don't know, but okay, that's fair. I'm not here to argue that. Gwendolyn, it's weird because I see this card on some Market Watch videos every now and then, so I don't know if it's sexualized or what. The one that surprised me the most was Pyrotechnics, and I didn't really look into the reasoning on this. It did surprise me, but whatever. I'm not here to discuss the reasoning. This is what they presented us. And then if you guys remember, 30th anniversary beta was released. Earthbind and Weakness. So we can add all the cards up here. These 4 here and these 2 here. And that's where we're at. Got like 13 cards total that, for lack of a better term, they're on the inappropriate list. They're on the naughty list. Additionally, cards by Harold McNeil have been flagged as part of that. I believe the article here says all cards were withheld by Harold McNeil. There's some other articles you can find on the internet that basically his relationship with Wizards of the Coast has been terminated. Harold McNeil was the artist behind Invoke Prejudice, as well as a few other cards. This is what I have on Harold McNeil here, and you can go through and see, like, we have Fog, Wall of Opposition, Alabaster Potion, Ray of Command, Soul Barrier, a card that I really enjoy playing. I was really surprised to see Sylvan Library, just because you got to remember that they don't reuse the art from this person as part of the declaration when it comes to Harold McNeil, is they're not going to use any of his art. And as we're going through these, I'm not here to interpret it. I will say that when you start to do some history reviewing on this artist, there is some stuff there that he leaves a lot of it to interpretation based on his actions. I was really disappointed that he did Darkness. That's a card I really love, and I do like some of the old Gothic style art, but it makes it really hard when you find out this person maybe has a checkered past. And you can go in and you can read a lot of information that supports, like, this dude supported some pretty awful things. Whatever. He also, surprisingly enough, did the Circle of Protection cycle for Tempest. And I'm just going through these so you guys can see some of the art. I think they reuse some of the art, like they reused Fog, Darkness. So that's the Harold McNeil section. But here's where I want to go with this. So let's just say that we accept that these cards are inappropriate. Let's accept that these cards, by this standard right here, didn't meet modern standards, are inappropriate. Okay, I can't change that. That's absolutely fine. I'm not arguing against that. I agree. There are cards on this list, as well as artists that Magic has worked with, where when you get a little more information and you find out a little bit more than just that first or second layer, you're like, oh, those people have some They have some shady checkered past that we need to be careful with. Here's where my problem comes in, and this is where I have not heard anything like this on the internet. Maybe it's out there and I just haven't come across it. People I was talking to yesterday stated the same thing, and they watch a lot of Magic content like I do. So I'm going to use eBay and TCG Player as the examples here. But I cannot go on either one of those sites and sell some of these cards. So let's just say, for example, I own Invoke the Prejudice. Let's say I buy a collection of cards, and someone says, I'm selling all my cards, I just want out of the game, I've been playing for years and years, and, buy the entire collection, I don't know what's in there, good luck. I'm going through the collection, I see Invoke Prejudice. From what I'm able to find out, eBay and TCG Player will not allow me to sell it. Those are two of the top selling places for players to go and sell their cards. So in that scenario, the player, who I'll be the player in this one, I don't own a copy of Invoke Prejudice, but I'm just using it as the example. The player and the two companies are taking responsibility for something that they never did. The player who sold the cards, the player who bought the cards, eBay and TCG Player, they were not involved in any of the printings, depictions, or wording used in any of these cards. So that is where I wanted to lead us to with this point. It drives me insane, guys. It drives me absolutely insane that people within the Magic the Gathering community we can't have these, they'll exclaim, we can't have these cards. Okay, I'm fine with that. Listen, if you think that these cards need to go to make it a more inclusive and safe space for Magic the Gathering, go for it. I'm not going to fight you on that because I agree there are some unsavory things going on here. But here's my issue. What did Wizards of the Coast do to correct the situation? What did Wizards of the Coast do to make it right? Let's start with nothing and move back from there. Because they've done nothing. You can take it off your website all you want. It doesn't remove the card from existence. I'm still looking at it right here. Let's use an example that I can actually connect with, Crusade. So I bought a collection about 10 years ago, and the guy had several white decks that all had at least one copy of Crusade in it. I'm pretty sure I'm sitting on 2 to 3 play sets of Crusades. I cannot go on eBay and sell those as a lot without risking getting in some trouble from what I'm able to find because these cards are deemed unsavory cards. But my problem is that in 1993 when Crusade came out originally, or let's use Invoke Prejudice in 94, I understand the world's changed, but I looked at this card 15, 20 years ago and I could tell there was issues. So you're telling me that Wizards of the Coast back in 1993, 1994, saw these cards and just thought, well, it's fine. We're not going to worry about it. We're not going to think deeper. We're not going to peel back a single layer to think, hey, is this okay? My argument here today, guys, is that if Wizards of the Coast really wants to be the woke, accountability-focused company that they're pretending to be, they should buy these cards. They should put out a statement that direct to them, you can sell them your cards. They've already proven they can sell you cards directly without the distribution. They should be able to reverse that process and take in your cards. And for the sake of discussion, I know this isn't necessarily the cleanest breakdown, but you look at some of these cards like Invoke Prejudice, that's a $200 to $300 card raw today. If you go and search places where you can maybe risk your account or even try and sell these, this is some of the pricing that you'll see. Now, admittedly, there's only 2 or 3 cards on here that actually have value. Invoke Prejudice, you could say Cleanse. I mean, $25 is $25. Pradesh Gypsies, I found a lot of graded versions in the 25 range. Jihad, 180. Any of the cards that don't have a graded price here on the side, just assume that there's a good markup on graded. Imprison, 5 to 10. The one that's really interesting is Crusade, because there's 11 versions. 11 versions have been printed. The lowest one's at $1, but you can get like alpha and beta versions of this for high-end dollars. So ignore the graded part for that. You can get a raw version for under $1. But let's just say for a clean number that you own one copy of each of these, you're looking at like $400 for 7 cards. I don't know about the rest of you, but I am not someone that could just throw away $400. I don't think I can do that. Financially, I don't see it as a responsible thing. And I work very hard for my money and work very hard for everything I have, so I don't want to just throw stuff away. So I come back to it. If Wizards of the Coast really wanted to do right and correct this issue, they should have said, we will buy these cards back. They don't have to buy it at the near mint. I don't think they should get to grade them. I don't think they should get to do anything other than send us your copies. I don't care if someone sends them a copy of Cleanse that is heavy play versus near mint. They should pay for it the same. Because the player and the companies here today that have to enforce these new standards aren't the ones that made the damn product. It is not like Harold McNeil walked into a printing press a couple of minutes before Legends went into print and just slid this image in. It is not like that in the least bit. And you can make the same argument about a lot of other things. The problem that I have is that while society's standards have changed, which is absolutely acceptable, the people who should be taking accountability for this really haven't done shit. You took it off your website, okay, I can go to many, many other places and still see images of it. You made it so we're not supposed to play these cards in many formats. Doesn't mean that the friends at the kitchen table are going to enforce it. And in a lot of cases, there's likely a lot of new players that have no idea what this list is and things like that. It may only be about 2.5 years old, but that doesn't mean that every player is aware of it. So, again, I really believe that if Wizards of the Coast wanted to fix this mistake, want to really show that, hey, we effed up and we need to make things right, they should have bought all these cards that they could get their hands on. And yes, there'd be people who would hold on to them, but there'd also be people, and I'm friends with quite a few, who have, I have a friend who's got copies of Cleanse and Crusade and Stone Throwing, like, because they played back in this time. This is when they started playing. They would just buy up a bunch of boxes and packs and open them. They have these cards sitting around. They don't play them, and they're concerned of how to move them and get rid of them. Even if you don't use the internet, and you decide, I'm going to go into my local game store, or I'm going to use Facebook Marketplace, or I'm just going to meet in person and try and trade, you still run the risk of people's response. We've seen extremism on both sides of every issue the past couple of years. I wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel comfortable shipping one of these cards that if I sold it to someone's house, because now they have my address. Like, that is the level of concern I have around this, is that there are people who may say, well, this guy's selling Invoke Prejudice on eBay. I'm going to buy it, I'm going to find his address, and then we're going to make him pay. Like, that's something that I understand. I'm creating a hypothetical there. We have seen over the past couple years such a level of emotional extremism on both sides of every issue that I don't feel it's wise to discount extremism anymore. A little bit deeper than I wanted to get on that. So that's really my whole point here, is we can have this list, and I agree with it. I really do. I agree with this list. Maybe not for the exact reasons that they were banned or deemed unsuitable, but when you use terms like they didn't meet modern standards, I can deal with that. But again, 1993, 1994, it's when this original list had all these cards printed. Well, you know what's funny is in 1993, there were no Crusades. The Crusades happened hundreds of years ago. we knew what the Crusades were. 30 years has not changed what a Crusade is. Maybe more people understand it, and maybe that's why it's different, but it doesn't change the fact that in 1993, the card was approved and put into production. So I stand by Wizards of the Coast should have to buy these back. I don't think it's fair to the players. I don't think it's fair to any third-party company that has to enforce these rules, because eBay, TCG Player, and the physical Magic the Gathering players did not make these decisions. We're not involved in the printing. We're not involved in the art. It's really absurd to me how this has been handled. And seeing the video from Magic Historian recently where eBay's cracking down on this, that tells me that we're moving further and further away from WOTC being held accountable. Now we're going to hold these players accountable. So if Tony K owns a couple playsets of Crusade from sets that he bought, or, that's a dual deck symbol from 2010, I believe. So as recent as 2010, cards were being released that had the word or the tone or the innuendo, whatever you want to call it. Okay, Gypsies was printed several times. So that's my whole point here. That's my whole rant. Is I don't think it's fair to the players, to the game stores, to the resale sites. I think this should fall on Wizards of the Coast. I think Wizards of the Coast should be forced to buy up all these cards and address the fact that they were the ones who made these decisions, not the other companies and players. It was Richard Garfield and whoever was on the staff at the time. That's the people who did it. And there's all these people who are upset about where Magic is right now. The finance of the game and the playability of the game. If you go back just a couple of years and you look at when Magic really became a shithole, and when people started arguing a lot more, it was around this time. I'm not saying that this list is the reason, but once this list was created, there's a lot more personal, political feelings brought into the game. I stand by that statement that Wizards of the Coast should have to purchase these cards. Just my take. I'm not looking for a huge cash payout. For me personally, I don't think I would even crack $150 if we did everything at near mint. I don't even think I'd get there. I do know that there are people that own these cards, and there are people that would love to get some of that value. Again, Invoke Prejudice raw, you can find copies for sale between $200 and $300. Jihad, $180. So before anyone says, well, you shouldn't be able to make money off it, then you throw away $200 or $180. You throw it away. And then you tell me it's not that big of a deal. Most people don't live a life where they can just throw money away and just burn its value up. Most people don't live that life. And it would be unfair to ask your random average Magic player to take that kind of a loss when they didn't make the decision to create these cards. So tell me what you guys think below. Really appreciate it if you've listened to this point. It means a lot. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time here at UGSM.